There is a grand jury that has convened in the case involving the death of Celeste Rivas. And this is a really interesting twist. And underlying it all is what I believe is a war between the LAPD and the LA County Medical Examiner. So here's what happened. The LA Times got hold of a petition that the LAPD filed asking to block the medical examiner from releasing any information about the death of Celeste Rivas. This is highly unusual. And as a matter of fact, the LAPD tried this back in September, and the judge in that case said there's no basis for doing that the LAPD didn't make a case. Well, they went back again, apparently a few days ago, and they asked again, seal all the information that the medical examiner has, and that judge did it. And the medical examiner was pissed and came out with a statement saying it's highly unusual. They believe in transparency, obviously a problem. The LA Times has seen that petition. The petition itself is sealed. So you can't even see the LAPD applying to get the order. It's all sealed. The LA Times, they say they've seen the petition, and in it, it says that a grand jury was convened in mid-November, just a week or so ago, and it's an investigative grand jury where they can subpoena witnesses and help the LAPD get information. Because think about it. The LAPD calls somebody and says, we want to talk to you. They say no. But if the grand jury subpoenas them, they have to come and they have to testify. So that's why law enforcement uses these grand juries. So this is an investigative grand jury. It met for a couple of days. We don't know if it's still in force. My guess would be it probably is, because the LAPD is looking at this, trying to get information. And a lot of people, when LAPD calls, says, we don't want to talk. But they have to if it's a grand jury. So this gets back to David. We told you that David, even though nothing is formal, the LAPD is viewing him as a suspect in a homicide. They believe it's a homicide, even though the medical examiner hasn't yet said that, and we're told they may never be able to because of the condition of her body. We also, you may know, reported a story over the weekend that we have been told by sources that her body was partially frozen. The captain of the LAPD came out and said that's not true. We went back to our source connected to the medical examiner, and they tripled, quadrupled, sextupled down and said it was partially frozen. Interesting that her fingers were so waterlogged they couldn't get a fingerprint off of it. This is direct from the medical examiner's documents. It says that they couldn't get that fingerprint because of waterlogged fingers. So that is the current state of this case. To summarize, the LAPD is clearly in the throes of an investigation. They're using the grand jury to get witnesses, presumably, to talk that they otherwise could not get to speak to them. David, we're told, is a suspect. We're told there is a second suspect that has something to do with the dismemberment of Celeste's body. There is a huge conflict between the medical examiner and the LAPD. Lauren Conlin from LA Magazine would also like to chime in, but before she does, would you like to subscribe?
I want to echo a couple things that Harvey said here. First and foremost, I have said from the start, it seems like LAPD and the medical examiner's office are completely at odds here. And I spoke to a forensic death investigator the other day, Joseph Scott Morgan, about the possibility of Celeste's body being frozen at one point. Not being frozen upon discovery, but at one point. Now, what he said was a medical examiner would be able to tell based on doing tests with the tissue. So they would be able to see if the body had thawed, had unthawed through microscopic cellular tissue. I mean, his words, not mine. But when TMZ got this leak from a source close to the medical examiner's office, my understanding was that testing had been done. It had been done to the point that the LAPD deemed this a homicide or a murder investigation, although they haven't come right out and said this. This was reported by the LA Times based on the petition they obtained by the LAPD blocking the medical examiner from releasing the death records. They saw this information that they are treating this like a homicide. So again, in my opinion, that came from the medical examiner's findings that they don't want out there. They do not want people like us speculating what possibly could have happened to Celeste and who was involved, because they don't want to, I guess, hinder their investigation. Although, I mean, at this point, there's tons of speculation, but I do believe that the theory of her body being frozen at one point is correct based on that. Now, just piggybacking off of this, on that petition to block the records from being released, the LA Times said they saw a grand jury number, which sort of got them thinking, okay, is a grand jury being convened? And yes, as Harvey said, it's an investigative grand jury. So these types of grand juries could take a really long time. I mean, we're talking months here. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fast. However, this is a step in the right direction. The investigative grand juries are used for complex cases, cases where police believe that a crime has been committed, but they don't necessarily have all of the details. They don't have all of the witnesses. They don't have all of the evidence. And with the investigative grand jury, they're going to be able to recommend proper subpoenas. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there is video surveillance, and this is hypothetical, video surveillance of somebody moving that Tesla at the end of July. Now, let's say there are rumors, and I don't know if the rumors are true or not, but that this person who moved the Tesla is not in the country. Well, police don't have the ability to say, hey, get back to the US, we want to talk to you. They can't do that unless a subpoena comes from a grand jury. So this type of grand jury is very important to get more information to eventually make an arrest in the case. So I'm happy at this point. I mean, I think, again, that things are progressing, although they're progressing slowly. But the LAPD has made it very clear that they do not want any information out there. I mean, their hand was forced. They finally made their second statement on November 25th, where they said, oh, and this is actually really interesting. What they said was, and this is different from what they had originally told People magazine. I believe it was Captain Scott Williams who told People magazine, you know, there is no evidence that she was frozen upon discovery or that she ever was frozen in general. He added that in parentheses. I cited that. In the LAPD statement from November 25th, he said, or the LAPD said, excuse me, they said there is no evidence that she was frozen upon discovery on September 8th, 2025. That's much different than saying that she was never frozen at all, in my opinion. So they put this out in a statement. They also debunked the decapitation, but they also confirmed that the Santa Barbara trip did happen in spring of 2025. TMZ reported that, and that was a great piece of information. They reported that he was in Santa Barbara County very late at night for a few hours, and the LAPD said, yes, this happened, but we don't know if this necessarily has anything to do with the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez or not. I mean, look, they're not going to tell us, of course. We already know that. So, yeah, their hand was forced. They had no choice but to make a statement. And I don't necessarily think that we're going to hear anything else from the police directly unless, again, their hand is forced by the media. So TMZ, keep up the good work. Come check out our investigation into this case over at lamag.com. We do videos every other day on this case. We have articles coming out every day, and we are heavily invested in seeing justice for Celeste Rivas Hernandez.